With Vince McMahon now gone from the WWE, Triple H has taken full control of creative, and things have become turbulent. The once glowing reputation he earned from his time running NXT is now being questioned, especially considering he often received more credit than he actually deserved, as he had a strong booking partner behind the scenes. Now that he is solely responsible for Raw and SmackDown, there is no longer a scapegoat. He can no longer blame Vince anymore for poor booking decisions. With fans growing increasingly vocal about his mishandling of certain talents and the apparent burials that have followed, let us take a closer look at the many times Triple H has buried talent, both during his in-ring career and also now as head of WWE's creative. Arguably, his most infamous burial took place at WrestleMania 19 against Booker T. In 2003, WWE had the perfect story. Booker T, a 5-time WCW champion who fought his way to the top despite every stereotype and roadblock in the business, was finally getting his moment on the biggest stage of them all, WrestleMania. The build-up was heavy, emotional, and borderline uncomfortable. Triple H, the World Heavyweight Champion at the time, cut promos that blurred the line between storyline, arrogance, and real-life prejudice. He reminded Booker T of people like him and mocked his past in jail and WCW. Naturally, fans assumed this was the ultimate redemption arc for Booker T. However, despite being able to conquer the system, win the title, and shut down Triple H once and for all, that eventually did not come. At WrestleMania 19, Triple H beat Booker T clean after hitting a pedigree on him and then waiting nearly 30 seconds before making the pin. Just like that, the story entirely collapsed. Booker T never fully recovered. He didn't get another serious world title push for years. Fans still talk about it as one of the most tone-deaf booking decisions in WWE history and a prime example of Triple H's massive ego. Rob Van Dam. Back in 2002, Rob Van Dam was one of the most popular superstars on the roster. The fans loved him. His in-ring style was ahead of its time, and there were serious plans to strap the rocket on his back. In fact, the original idea for RVD was for him to become the first ever World Heavyweight Champion on Raw after the title split. However, those plans quietly got scrapped. Instead, Triple H was handed the new World Heavyweight title on a silver platter, literally. And when RVD finally got a shot at Unforgiven 2002, he lost clean. And what made it all worse was that RVD supposedly rejected Triple H's help with backstage promos, and after that his stock magically plummeted. He never sniffed a main event ever again for years and had to wait until 2006 to win a world title, but by then the momentum was long gone. Goldberg. Bill Goldberg came into the WWE in 2003 as one of WCW's biggest stars, and initially things looked great. He beat The Rock, he got huge pops, and had his sights set on the World Heavyweight Championship held by Triple H. They were set to face off at SummerSlam, but Triple H was nursing a groin injury and the match was moved to the Elimination Chamber. Even then, Goldberg should have walked out with the title. He dominated the chamber, he speared everyone in sight, and the crowd was on fire for him. But instead of capitalizing on that momentum, Triple H once again, even as an injured champion, managed to retain the title. He not only pinned Goldberg, but Evolution even handcuffed him after the match and beat him down with a sledgehammer. When Goldberg finally won the belt months later, damage was done. The mystique was completely shattered and the push had cooled off. And after that, Goldberg's WWE run never reached its full potential. Scott Steiner, 2003. Scott Steiner was red hot when he re-debuted in WWE during the Ruthless Aggression era. He had the crowd behind him and the credibility of being a former WCW World Champion. His feud with Triple H was meant to elevate him into the top tier, but the opposite happened. That Royal Rumble 2003 match was a complete disaster, and rather than protecting Steiner, WWE doubled down with a rematch at No Way Out, which somehow was even worse. Behind the scenes, Steiner accused Triple H of intentionally sabotaging their matches, claiming that he made him look bad on purpose. Whether or not that is true, the results spoke for itself. Steiner went from the title contention picture to being an afterthought that didn't even make the WrestleMania 19 card. Randy Orton. In 2004, Randy Orton made a history by becoming the youngest World Heavyweight Champion in WWE history. Fans were ready for a new era. The next night, Evolution turned on him, setting up a heated rivalry with Triple H. But just 1 month into his reign, Randy Orton dropped the title back to Triple H at Unforgiven. That quick loss completely derailed Orton's babyface momentum. He looked like a weak champion who couldn't even survive on his own. Even though WWE kept him around the title picture, the magic was gone. It would take years before Randy Orton truly found himself as a top-tier star star again, and many fans point to this decision as the first time Triple H's politics stunted a future main eventer, CM Punk. One of his most iconic burials happened against CM Punk, who was the hottest act in wrestling in 2011. His pipe bomb promo changed everything, and fans were rallying behind him in ways WWE hadn't seen in years. But somehow, just a few months later, CM Punk was losing to Triple H at Night of Champions. There was no title on the line, Punk had all the momentum, but Triple H beat him clean. It made no sense from a booking perspective, and it felt like a personal flex more than anything else. Punk himself even talked about this in interviews. He said it was nothing more than a power move that stalled his rise. Even though Punk eventually bounced back, the loss was just simply unnecessary, and it felt like a reminder that Triple H held the keys to the kingdom, and as if that wasn't bad enough, he even had an old Kevin Nash enter the entire feud, convoluting the rise of CM Punk even further. Sting, WrestleMania 31. Sting's debut in the WWE was one of the most anticipated moments in modern wrestling history. Fans had waited over a decade to see the icon step in the WWE ring, and when he finally did, they paired him up with Triple H for his big WrestleMania debut. Everyone assumed this was Sting's redemption arc, a WCW final soldier standing tall against the tyranny of the authority. But in a baffling decision, Triple H beat Sting clean after turning the match into a nostalgia fest featuring DX and NWO. Even Hulk Hogan and Scott Hall were reportedly stunned when Triple H said that he was going over during rehearsals. The loss made Sting look like a second rate and ensured his WWE legacy started and ended with a thud. D'Lo Brown, Attitude Era. Long before Triple H was a top guy, he already had a reputation for backstage influence. According to former head writer Vince Russo, during an angle between DX and the Nation, Triple H outright refused to put over D'Lo Brown. D'Lo was one of the most underrated guys of the Attitude Era, consistent, charismatic, and reliable. A win over Triple H would have elevated him, but Triple H, even back then, saw himself as too valuable to take that loss. Vince Russo has even said that this was the first moment he realized Triple H operated differently, and not always in a good way. D'Lo never got that push and quietly faded into the mid-card. Zack Ryder, 2011. Zack Ryder was one of the few guys that actually got over on his own terms. His YouTube show, Z, True Long Island Story, was a viral hit, and fans loved him. WWE finally leaned into the momentum and gave him some shine, but it did not last. In a random segment, Triple H pedigreed Ryder for no reason. No storyline, no payoff, just Triple H asserting his dominance on the very platform Ryder used to build up his career. It wasn't a match, it was simply a message. After that, Ryder's momentum faded and he quickly relegated to comedy bits. One pedigree was all it took. Let us now take a closer look at all of the burials that he has had as the head of creative. Starting with Jey Uso. Despite being one of the only wrestlers who naturally got over with the fans, Jey Uso's singles run has been filled with constant disrespect and burials. His biggest accomplishment seemingly did not last too long. It started all when Jey Uso finally captured his first singles gold and became the WWE Intercontinental Champion. As much as the fans loved it, Triple H suddenly halted his push and had him lose his title only after 28 days of being a champion. He would quickly bounce back, however, and shockingly beat John Cena at the 2025 Royal Rumble, winning the match. Jey Uso was supposed to go into the main event of WrestleMania Night 1 against a champion of his own choosing, but since Triple H didn't see Jey Uso as a real main eventer, he had to default back to Roman Reigns, and he forced Jey Uso to be the opener against Gunther at WrestleMania 41. Nonetheless, after a heroic build-up to WrestleMania 41, Jey Uso finally got the victory over his tormentor Gunther, and he became the World Heavyweight Champion. This title run also seemingly got halted for no reason, as he never got to have a proper one-on-one match to defend his world title, as each match was filled with run-ins from guys who were higher on the card than him despite being the champion. To put the icing on the cake, he suddenly lost his title to Gunther in their first rematch on an episode of Monday Night Raw. It all made it worse knowing that they pulled the title away from Jey because they wanted Gunther to wrestle Bill Goldberg, who was 58 years at the time, in his final wrestling match. Since losing the belt, Jey hasn't had his own promo segments or proper one-on-one matches where he actually won. He had a match against Cody Rhodes in the King of the Ring tournament, but he ended up losing that one as well clean to Cody, and he was downgraded back to the tag divisions by aiding Roman Reigns in his return. The Hurt Business. When Triple H took over WWE Creative in 2022, fans were hopeful. One of the most anticipated revivals was the Hurt Business, a faction that had become one of the best things going during the pandemic era under MVP's leadership. Bobby Lashley was a dominant WWE champion. Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin held the Raw tag team titles, and MVP held everything together as the mouthpiece. Fans were ready for them to pick up where they left off, but instead of being rebuilt, the group was quietly dismantled. Cedric and Shelton were kept off TV or jobbed out. MVP publicly confirmed in interviews that he was told to tell his group to go across the street, a euphemism for working at AEW. Shelton was released, Cedric floated around doing nothing, nothing, and Lashley, once a centerpiece of Raw, became directionless. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was an active burial of one of the WWE's strongest acts in recent memory. Not a great way to start your career as head of creative. Bray Wyatt. Bray's long-awaited return at Extreme Rules 2022 was treated like the second coming. The QR codes, the cryptic vignettes, the buzz, it was pure electricity. But then, nothing. He cut a few promos, had a weak feud with LA Knight that led to a disastrous pitch black match, and he disappeared again. Creative reportedly had no idea what to do with him. Despite being one of the most imaginative minds in wrestling, Triple H's regime failed to harness any of it. Even before Bray's tragic passing, his return already fizzled out. No creative vision, no meaningful story, just a flat landing of one of WWE's most compelling characters. To make matters worse, they gave his blood brother, Bo Dallas, the character of Uncle Howdy, and they rebuilt the Wyatt Six and the Wyatt family, but as it currently all stands, that faction seems directionless, meaningless, and a cheap copy of whatever Bray Wyatt was able to build rather than a tribute to him. Johnny Gargano. After becoming a beloved figure in NXT under Triple H, fans were hopeful for Gargano to return in 2022, but instead of capitalizing on that momentum, he was saddled with comedy segments, a watered-down character, and meaningless tag team matches. The Gargano wrestling that had main evented takeovers was gone. In his place, a guy who couldn't get a consistent reaction from crowds. Despite being tailor-made for Triple H's style, Johnny was treated like a job guy. His reunion with DIY didn't carry any real weight, and eventually, he was just another guy on the roster, forgotten in the shuffle. Tommaso Ciampa was one of Triple H's biggest NXT stars, a two-time NXT champion known for his intense promos, gritty in-ring style, and deep connection with the fans. When Triple H took over WWE Creative, many expected Ciampa to get a strong main roster push. Instead, after returning from his injury, Ciampa was mostly used as The Miz, his silent reinforcer, with almost no promos or meaningful storylines. This was a huge step down for the former top NXT talent. When he reunited with Johnny Gargano as DIY, the team was poorly booked, given little screen time, and involved in forgettable matches instead of high-profile feuds. Ciampa was rarely featured in singles competition and never got close to a title contention again. Even in matches he did have, he was booked to lose or put over other wrestlers. For example, his matches against mid-card talent never felt like big opportunities to re-establish him. Despite being a key part of NXT's success and having a strong bond with Triple H, Ciampa largely got ignored creatively. Injuries didn't help him, but the main issue was a lack of faith from creative. Triple H seemed to prioritize other stars, leaving Ciampa in the shuffle and effectively buried. The Street Profits. There was real buzz around Montez for becoming a breakout star. Fans compared him to The Rock. He had charisma, athleticism, and natural crowd connection, and yet the Profits were kept together, then split from the tag scene, then brought back with Bobby Lashley, and then dropped once again. Despite teasing a heel turn and alignment with Bobby Lashley, nothing came of it. The trio essentially became an afterthought. Montez's momentum evaporated quickly, and the Profits, once one of the most exciting acts of the company, now became an act without a purpose. LA Knight. Despite getting over with the fans entirely on his own, LA Knight was consistently overlooked. He was kept off TV during key periods, given minimal promo time despite his strength on the mic, and he was even not booked for WrestleMania 39. Fans begged him for a push, chanting his name during unrelated matches, but even that was not enough, and when he finally did get his momentum, Triple H kept him far away from the main event scene, and a year later from WrestleMania 39, he finally got the opportunity and he went into WrestleMania as the United States Champion. Unfortunately, he had to job out to Jacob Fatu, and ever since he lost that title, he never got his momentum back, and he's been consistently pushed down the card and used as nothing more than a filler segment for when the big stars come around. So even that United States Championship felt more like a punishment rather than a reward, and there is no indication that he will ever challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. Karrion Kross, arguably his biggest flop yet. When Karrion Kross returned under Triple H, it was framed as a redemption arc. After his disastrous main roster run under Vince McMahon, who had him come out with helmets and suspenders, fans were hopeful he'd get a proper push this time, but that never came. Despite the mystique, the entrance, and Scarlett by his side, Kross was booked into irrelevance. He lost feud after feud to Drew McIntyre, to Rey Mysterio, to AJ Styles. Each time, fans hoped it was just a slow build, but no build ever came. He became one of Triple H's biggest missed opportunities, and when he finally got another shot at relevancy, when the whole push Kross narrative started to take place online and he became a top merch seller for the WWE, instead of capitalizing on the opportunity, Triple H made Kross look weak against a lower card talent like Sami Zayn, and he had him lose to one haluva kick. Fans couldn't understand why this happened again, and this was another prime example of Triple H just simply not wanting to waste time into building a new star and relying on his old talent to carry his shows. The Miz. The Miz may not be everyone's favorite, but there is no denying that he has been one of the WWE's most reliable performance. Under Triple H, he became a glorified clown, used only to put over other talent in meaningless matches or comedy segments. He was even humiliated by celebrities like Logan Paul and Bad Bunny, rarely getting any wins and becoming the butt of the joke every week. Instead of being respected as a two-time world champion, The Miz was treated like the company's go-to punching bag. Austin Theory. Theory was once viewed as a future main eventer, even being handpicked by Vince McMahon himself, but under Triple H, his entire character was overhauled, and not in a good way. He lost the Money in the Bank briefcase in a comedic fashion, had his cocky heel persona stripped away, and he became just another mid-card guy holding the United States talent. Even with the gold around his waist, fans did not care, and neither did creative. After that, he faded as far as into the background as he could, and by 2025, most people forgot he was even considered the future, let alone beating somebody like John Cena. Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss was one of WWE's most recognizable women, multiple-time champion, crossover appeal, and strong merch sales. But after Bray Wyatt returned, she was tossed back into a half-hearted supernatural gimmick that led nowhere, and then she disappeared. And after nearly 2 years, she finally came back to lose almost every single singles match she's had, and now being pushed down into the tag divisions. A complete waste of a name in the female division that could definitely use somebody of her stature. Charlotte Flair. Even Charlotte Flair, the golden child of WWE, wasn't immune under Triple H. Her returns became increasingly abrupt and unfulfilling. She'd come back, win a title, drop it quickly, and then disappear again. Fans no longer knew what to make of her character. There was no depth and no consistency. And so when she came back to wrestle against Tiffany Stratton after winning the Royal Rumble, fans were just left scratching their heads as she went into the match against Tiffany Stratton just to lose, and a year prior she already lost the title to Rhea Ripley herself. So having back-to-back big profile losses after returning big time, she's now downgraded back to the tag divisions alongside Alexa Bliss. Triple H's vision for the female division clearly did not have her in mind in long-term storytelling. Gunther. Despite being booked as his favorite wrestler on the current roster and his proclaimed future for the business, Gunther had an incredible intercontinental title reign, a record-breaking and dominant performance week after week, and suddenly he dropped the belt to Sami Zayn on the grandest stages of them all when it mattered the most, and after that, things just started to fall apart. Fans expected a proper main event push. Instead, he won the World Heavyweight title just to have meaningless matches, and then he ended up losing the world title to Jey Uso at WrestleMania once again. When he finally reclaimed the World Heavyweight Championship, it was only so that he could have the belt around his waist for Goldberg's last retirement match, and just like that, all the credibility that Gunther had built up was instantly gone. The ring general who ruled over 600 days had just become another name we will eventually forget. Seth Rollins has always been seen as one of WWE's workhorses, but under Triple H, his character took a strange turn. A flashy, flamboyant, Joker-inspired gimmick that was entertaining at first quickly lost its edge, and it became very emasculating despite being the inaugural World Heavyweight Champion that seemingly felt like a participation trophy, as Roman Reigns was still the unified world champion with both titles around his waist. Despite winning his match at the main event of WrestleMania 41, the damage seemingly has been done already to Seth Rollins, and he is in dire need of a big character makeover going into WrestleMania 42, especially as Mr. Money in the Bank. Even though he is one of the top guys on the roster, he just seemingly is not the guy, and he has become just a guy. Drew McIntyre. Despite having one of the best runs during the pandemic era, when the arenas finally opened up again, Triple H seemingly had Drew lose every single feud that he was in. He lost his feud against CM Punk. Then, when he won the world title at WrestleMania 40, he got cashed in on by Damian Priest. Instead of being the guy who came out on top of that feud, he lost over and over again. To make matters worse, he got concertoed in his Hell in a Cell match with Priest and was written off TV. When he finally came back, instead of addressing Priest, he crashed in a promo segment with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton for some reason just to get RKO'd. To add insult to injury, he lost his match against Orton at Saturday Night's main event, and then he was booked in a match with Jelly Roll and Logan Paul at WrestleMania instead of reclaiming his world title. If I have missed any burials, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys next time.